Facilities related to the supply of the occupying Russian army have been damaged in the temporarily occupied districts of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions. The spokesman for the Ukrainian Volunteer Army, Serhiy Bratchuk, said this on Espreso TV. Blackout is currently underway in the temporarily occupied Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions. We are talking about several locations. In particular, these are the power supply facilities that ensured the operation of the Russian military infrastructure. We are talking about the city of Molochansk, which is a temporarily occupied territory of the Zaporizhzhia region. We also have information about the Henichesk substation. In Melitopol, an arsenal with ammunition was hit. The damage Russia will be assessed in more detail later, noted Bratchuk. According to the Ukrainian Volunteer Army spokesperson, the Russian forces have recently become more active in the Zaporizhzhia sector, attempting to conduct assault operations. First of all these facilities that are currently without power supply are primarily military facilities. And secondly, I will try to say this in a veiled manner, as the reconnaissance is still ongoing. Some enemy logistics related primarily to the Zaporizhzhia sector have been damaged. Logistics in the temporarily occupied territories is directly linked to the occupying Russian forces. This is a serious loss for them. We will be able to say how critical it is a little later, Bratchuk emphasized. Recently, Ukrainian Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrskyi said that Russian forces have, significantly, increased their activity in the Zaporizhzhia direction and are conducting active offensive actions there. Russia has concentrated its main efforts on the Pokrovsk, Toretsk, Lyman, and Novopavlovsk directions, as well as border areas of Sumy Oblast with Russia, Syrskyi said in his summary of armed forces activities for May 2025. The Zaporizhzhia sector in Ukraine refers to the area of active military operations within Zaporizhzhia Oblast, a strategically significant oblast in southeastern Ukraine where Russian and Ukrainian forces are engaged in intense fighting. This sector is crucial due to its industrial importance, proximity to the Sea of Azov, and the presence of Europe's largest nuclear power plant, with control of the area seen as vital for both Ukrainian defense and Russian military objectives. The security service of Ukraine blew up the Crimean Bridge underwater. Now the structure is in a state of emergency. This was reported by the SBU. It is noted that the operation lasted several months. In particular, SBU agents mined the supports of the overpass, which was illegally built by the Russian Federation. As a result, today, June 3, without casualties among the civilian population, at 4:44 a.m. the first explosive device was activated. According to the SBU, the underwater supports of the piers are heavily damaged at the bottom level. 1,100 kilograms of explosives in TNT equivalent contributed to this. In fact, the bridge is in a state of emergency. The chairman of the SBU, Lieutenant General Vasyl Malyuk, personally supervised the operation and coordinated its planning. God loves the Trinity, and the SBU always brings its plans to an end and never repeats itself. Previously, we hit the Crimean Bridge twice in 2022 and 2023. Therefore, today we continued this tradition underwater. There is no place for any illegal objects of the Russian Federation on the territory of our state. Therefore, the Crimean Bridge is an absolutely legitimate target, especially considering that the enemy used it as a logistical artery to supply its troops. Crimea is Ukraine, and any manifestations of occupation will receive our harsh response, said Malyuk. Ukraine has pulled off one of its most daring operations, attacking key airfields of the Russian Aerospace Forces strategic aviation with drones. Z channels have erupted in hysteria, demanding nuclear strikes against Ukraine. The angry patriot, Maxim Kalashnikov, also spoke out. A complete failure of the FSB, he wrote. The well-known Z channel, military informant, did not hide its shock. strategic missile carriers are attacked by FPV drones launched directly from the scene. How to comment on this, we have no idea. An officer of the Russian armed forces, Patriot Ivan Otrakovsky, spoke out. He blamed the Kremlin for the failure. So that you understand. The airfields were not protected or covered in any way. Not by electronic warfare, not by air defense, including mobile, not by hangars in which the planes were supposed to be hidden. A cheap UAV destroyed strategic aviation planes, the cost of which is billions, and what's worse, they are no longer produced. It feels like we are being deliberately deprived of means of protection before a possible world war. Who is depriving us? The same ones I am constantly talking about, a group of spies sitting in the highest echelons of power, Otrakovsky wrote. The Russian channel, Protests in the World, expressed an interesting idea. It did not hide its admiration for what was happening. This is what one of the most daring pages of modern military history looks like, an attack by the Ukrainian armed forces on an airfield of strategic bombers. The Ukrainian defense forces are not just striking, they are changing the very nature of war. Today's operation against the Russian strategic aviation is already on a par with the epical attacks of the past, the British raid on Taranto in 1940 and the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. Then, naval aviation showed for the first time that battleships are a thing of the past. Now this role is played by drones. Small, smart, precise. They easily penetrate thousands of kilometers deep into the enemy and do what used to be the task of entire fleets. Old military textbooks can safely be sent to the waste paper. Ukraine is writing new ones. And it is writing them live on air, the resource wrote. Z-propagandist Poznyakov began to threaten that he would tell the Russian dictator Putin about what happened and hit him with Orshnik. Who will be held accountable for this? I have tears in my eyes, he wrote. The Russian military 13th went further and demanded a nuclear strike on Ukraine. This is damage to our nuclear shield, the shield of our country, the occupier was indignant. Z-propagandist Romanov also did not keep silent. The bombers were built during the more developed civilization of the Soviet Union and are a non-renewable strategic resource. Modern stripes have only thought of covering the fuselages with tires. The stripes have not thought of stretching a net from a fishing line, as is done by operators in the SVO zone. There is no need to talk about placing electronic warfare at the bases of strategic bombers. The situation was described quite colorfully by the Russian Z resource, Northern Channel, which is associated with the Russian armed forces. The Ukrainian armed forces are simply destroying our strategic aviation. They have already covered the 4th airfield in a couple of hours. With FPV drones. Not even with missiles. We haven't had to endure such humiliation as today for a long time, he noted.